So Professor Jim Schultz here for my Finance 311 or my Finance 680 students. This is going to be a basic time value tutorial. You see I have a basic problem here on the screen. I'm going to use this problem as an example to illustrate a few very important things regarding primarily how to operate your calculator, the Texas Instruments BA2 Plus that we're going to be working with in both of those classes. If you have me for either 311 or 680, you know by this point I have already recommended you get this model. So of course, again, everything we're going to talk about only pertains to this model. Alright, so this is a basic time value money situation. Suppose you have $600 to invest today. If the interest rate is 8%, then how much will you have in 7 years? And if you're watching this video to brush up on your basic skills, I would strongly encourage you to take notes along with this video. I think it would be very helpful if you did that, and then you can look back at them and use them as you work through the homework problems and other problems assigned in class and things like that. Okay, so how much do we have in 7 years? All right, so we've got the basic timeline constructed right here, right? So I've got 600 today. I need to know how much is this going to be worth in 7 years at 8%. The first thing you want to remember in terms of time value of money is that interest rates are always going to be quoted annually, right? And when I say always, I mean 95 times out of 100. The default setting for interest rates is an annual representation, an annual quotation. So if I see a rate and I don't see any type of a timestamp or time frequency on that rate, you always use annual as your default setting, right? And so in my classes, I will not even write 8% per year or 10% per year. The assumption is that you already understand that, right? And so make sure that you understand this. So there's the first thing that you want to understand. Just for any time value money problem, not even necessarily calculator specific. Okay, so we want to begin by setting up the situation in terms of what do we know and what are we looking for. So I know I got my PV, I got my FE, I got my I got my payment, and I got my N, right? I always like to begin all of my problems with, well, what am I looking for? Well, it's very clear in this problem you're looking for a future value. It's not always clear when you get into some more challenging problems. And so I think it's a good habit to begin to form, what are you actually trying to accomplish with this problem? I would do that first. And then simply fill in all the other information you know. You know the present value is 600. You know the interest rate is 8. You know that there is no payment. Now this is also important. Even though there is no payment, I would not leave that blank and simply not enter it into a calculator. That will work for you most of the time, but the calculator is kind of finicky in a few spots. And so just to be complete and to be on the safe side, I would actually physically enter 0 in for your payment on the calculator. And then obviously you know N is 7. Okay, so how do you actually go about entering this in your calculator? Alright, so when I go to enter PV, for example, you want to press the number and then the button. So I'm going to press 600 on my calculator, which obviously you can't see me doing, but I'm working it along with doing this video. And then you press the PV key, and then on your screen it will say PV equals 600. And then from there you can move right into the next input, which here would be I. So you want to key in 8 and then I. It's technically I over Y on this calculator. So 8 is I. Now, a quick note. For the calculator, your interest rates, so I'm talking about this guy right here, your interest rates have to be in percent. Meaning, if it's 8%, the number goes in as 8. It does not go in as 0.08. That is one of the most common mistakes that students make, and obviously that's going to throw off all of your work. And so you want to make sure that you understand that very clearly. So then you move on to the next one. I'm going to go 0, payment, so then on my screen it says payment equals 0, and then I'm going to go 7, N. Okay, and then once you have entered these 4 inputs, you simply press compute, which is in the upper left-hand corner of your calculator, compute FV, and here's what I get, and I'll write down exactly what I get and I'll talk about it. Minus 1028, 29. So that is what your calculator gave you, and it should give you a minus. Alright, now, this is the primary reason why I put this video together. Obviously for the few things I mentioned to this point, but it's critical that you understand that PV and FV must have opposite signs. Okay, they have to have opposite signs. If both of these are some number, they will always have opposite signs. Meaning, you put your PV in as 600, you got minus 1028.29. Now I'm not going to work through this next part, but if you left these bottom three the same and simply enter this as minus 600, this would come out as positive 1028.29. So you would get the same absolute value. It only changes because you changed the signs. Okay? So with our calculator, you must be comfortable with this sign convention. PV and FV must have opposite signs. Okay? Now here is another very important note. You will also have some problems, and I'm not going to work one out in this example. Maybe I'll do one for another video. But you will also have some problems where either the PV or the FV is 0. So let's say, for example, I had a problem where, and again, this does not pertain to the information that you see on the screen, but let's say that that was 0, and this was, this was some number. So let's just put, that's some number. We don't know what it is, right? And let's say that you're solving for this. So now it's a bit of a different situation, obviously, right? So now I just said to you that PV and FV must have opposite signs. But since this is 0, it doesn't have a sign. It's a non-event for the most part, right? At least for this set of circumstances. So you want to shift your thinking in that now that this is 0, your remaining two inputs, so it's going to be this guy and this guy, also must have opposite signs. It does not matter which sign you give which. They just have to have opposite signs. Okay, so that's very, very important. And I'll go through a more complicated, I'll set up another video for what happens when you have a number for all three of these. I just wanted to kind of cover the basic things in this video. So this is 600, getting back to what we know, and this is 0, and this is a question mark. So those are a few basic tips to begin using your calculator. And if you haven't had 311 in a while, that's going to be helpful for you. If you've already had 311 recently, or you were able to follow along our discussion in our most recent class, then you're probably going to be in pretty good shape, and you may not really need to watch this video. But it's 4 or 5 minutes, 6 minutes long, and so it still might be helpful for you. But just remember, interest rates are annual. Interest rates have to go in as a percent, and remember everything we talked about for your sign conventions.